Facebook family. Today on Comic Spot, thank you for joining. We have people from Denise Winkelman's Facebook listening and from mine. Thanks for watching. I have the most amazing person I can't wait to get to know, having read the bio she submitted to me, which reads, and I quote, lest you should think I'm stealing, says, I'm originally from Denver, Mile High City, and just moved. She didn't say that. I did. I'm originally from Denver and just moved to Los Angeles. Wow. I'm a screenwriter, holy Toledo, stand-up comedian, and a model. A model. Woo. I was a she was a semifinalist in the 2019 Maxim cover model search. So let's talk. I've got questions. Welcome to the stage here, Denise Winkelman. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. Oh my
Are you?
goodness.
I'm so glad you're here. I love getting to know people. I want to know your special story. Where you grew up in Denver, right?
Well, kind of. I moved from Denver. I've lived all over. I'm a transplant. I grew up in northern Minnesota. I moved to Cincinnati when I was 23, so
Wow.
2003, right after college to be a professional wrestler.
What?
Yes,
Professional wrestler. Holy Toledo.
yeah. So Cincinnati was a big hotbed of independent professional wrestling. It was really hot, and I did it for about 5 years. I was a professional wrestler for 5 years.
How did that go?
It was good. I met some really, really talented people. It started to hurt after a while, to be honest, but I love the element where to rip. My sense of humor is very sarcastic, so I definitely used my talking ability probably more than my athletic ability most of the time. And so I would just like essentially make all the dudes cry for the most part. Uh, so it was a good outlet for the most part. And then I moved to Denver in 2013 for my corporate job. I was working corporate at the time.
Like what? Doing what?
So it was financial sales.
Okay.
So helping people with their 401k, financial planning, planning for retirement. It wasn't nearly as creative or fun as professional wrestling for the most part,
No. I
but
was a banker, so I get it.
it definitely gave me a lot of good material when I first started, though.
Yes.
So I started to do professional wrestle, like train a little bit in 2016, and it just hurt too much at almost 40 years old. And
Yeah.
so I met some cool people, and they got me into the fitness modeling type of realm. They suggested some photographers. I did some fitness shoots, and and then I started stand up in 2017. So I've been doing it 3 years at this point, and I love it. It was the most natural thing I've ever done, where it was fun, but it seemed to go well right off the start.
Wow.
Uh, so it was good, and so it really moved out in 20 just before quarantine started in February. I decided to take a real shot on comedy, focus on some of the creative stuff. I'd written a screenplay, and we're in the process of pitching it at this point. So, trying to do a lot, kind of
You
things.
are.
Uh,
What is the catalyst that made you jump from professional wrestling to stand-up comedian?
well, I had always been a fan of stand up. I love Adam Sandler. I was from that generation, so as old school SNL, like Chris Rock was a big part of my comedy for me. And then just later on, I would listen to a show called Bob and Tom's when I was in Cincinnati, and they would have all these comedians on. And they were kind of a nationally known show, but Mike
Yeah.
Birbiglia was a big one that came out of there. Roy Wood was a big part of when I was listening, and I thought it was a really cool way to kind of of them to build a platform and then kind of a fan base as eventually became like headlining comics and stuff like that. So I've always
Absolutely.
been a fan. And when I was doing wrestling, I was like, I need an outlet. I want to be able to talk. I want to be able to, have that platform. And I wrote about. I think my first set was for a fundraiser some people put me up for, and it was 300 people. I had never done an open mic, and it actually went fairly well. I shook the mic quite a bit, and I probably paced a little bit, but the overall material and the reaction was pretty solid. So,
Wow. Now, when you were a wrestler, professional wrestler, and and then you go into comedy, did some of your fans in wrestling come to comedy?
I wish I could say they did, but unfortunately, it was Cincinnati, so I haven't really performed in Cincinnati. They'll follow it on Facebook and some stuff like that, but it's not. Yeah, I haven't had the chance to perform in front of them at this point.
And then talk to me about this whole Maxim, scenario in 2019 where you were a semifinalist. Is that what it
Yep,
was?
the semifinalist. Yep,
How
and
did that feel for someone to tell you you're gorgeous?
well, it felt really good. So I had done a couple fitness shoots, and the pictures were unbelievable. I was working out all the time. I love telling people I'm a Maxim cover semifinalist, just so people can look at me and be like, really, like how's that like, But no, it went well. So I took these photos, and it's simply anybody can submit, and you keep going. And so it started. We're going to narrow down out of thousands of people down to the top 20. And I passed, and I just kept going and going until I finished top three. And it was about like 2.5 months, where every week there was a deadline kind of thing. I wish I could say I made a lot of money off of it or I made a ton of connections, but the truth is it's just a cool resume piece at this point.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And did you meet a lot of interesting people that were competing with you?
We would just tag each other. It was more of an Instagram kind of Facebook thing, very social media driven. So we would see each other's posts with the hashtags and stuff like that. I think I'm more likely to meet them now that I'm in Los Angeles, to be honest.
Yes. How have you enjoyed getting to Los Angeles?
I was so excited, but this is the absolute worst timing ever. I
Yes.
moved on February 20th. I
Oh my
quit my
gosh.
I quit my corporate job. Uh, and I was like, oh, I just get something part time, like kind of figure out the bills once I'm out there. And then 2 weeks later, COVID hits, and so it's been a process to get through. Um,
What
yeah,
part
but
of
I'm
LA are you in,
I'm
Denise?
in North Hollywood.
Okay, so how far up north are you? Up the Cahuenga Pass or not that far?
Not that far. We're in the Santa Fe Arts District, is what it's called. Or I want to
Okay.
say Santa Fe because I'm used to Denver, but it's the Arts District in North Hollywood. So a bunch of museums. Ha-Ha's is down the street from us. So got a bunch of comedy clubs. I really like the area. I'm excited for everything to open back up, but yeah, it's been a process so far.
So you found an apartment before you got there or when you got there? I know I moved to LA and stayed in kind of a motel until I found an apartment. What was your trajectory like in your move?
Well, so it was really, I had started writing, I had written a screenplay with my roommate now. So I met her doing stand-up comedy in Denver. We became fast friends. Actually, one of the first festival I ever did was called the Femme Fatale Festival in Denver. It's very small.
Wow.
I didn't know at the time, but it turns out it was held at a sex club. So there was a cage set up. But
You say one of your first festivals. How many festivals have you done?
I've done, let's see, I've done five so far.
And
I've
you've been
done
in comedy how long?
3 years.
That's really good. And I'm bad at math, and I know that's good for a comic.
Yeah, I've always, well, it's kind of the wrestling piece of it was use social media to promote yourself. Like that was one of the points of doing the modeling pictures to build social media and then promote myself and get good tape and then send it out and, build resumes and stuff like that. So yeah,
Wow.
I've done a couple in Wichita. I've done one in Denver. I've done two in LA.
So, are you looking forward to getting a day job? And are you going to stick with financial, whatever it is you do?
Sorry. Scratchy, all the mold.
Yes, she has mold in her apartment.
Right. So dealing through that. Um, so the day job is it's a work in progress. I'm starting something and we'll see kind of how it goes. For now, it'll be financial sales. My goal is to really focus on stand up once it's back and really put a good effort. I'm starting to do some shows with Dat Pam, who won
Yes, he's
last.
from Ace's Comedy Club. I knew him at the beginning 5 years ago.
Oh wow, he's awesome. He's
Yeah.
very very funny. So he's doing a lot of produced shows right now, and I'm starting to hop on those and kind of excited for that. But the long story is my roommate, she was or not my roommate at the time. We started writing a screenplay. I pitched her an idea, and she was like, "We need to write that out." So we wrote it. It's called The Authentic Step, and
Okay.
it's a very dramatic screenplay. So my background is when I was doing professional wrestling, uh, I was male and I
Mhm.
transitioned to female, so I'm a trans comic. And
Cool. Good for you.
thanks,
Applaud you.
thank you.
Not
Uh,
easy.
so trans comic, and I wrote a story like kind of loosely based on my transition, like growing up in a very religious home, kind of the worst case scenario of what could have happened, I think. And my roommate has an agent, and we started pitching it, and we've gotten really good response. We've entered it into a bunch of competitions, and I'll tell you, it's the most special thing I've ever done. I'm
Oh,
so
that's so
proud of it.
great.
And
Wonderful.
and
There's nothing better than having, telling a story and being so proud of it, putting in all your work in. If you're going to do something and put your all in it, because the feeling you get, nobody, I mean, people can't come along and tell you good job like you can tell yourself if you put your all into it.
right. No, I agree, and the people who have read it, they're just like, oh my God, I can see your footprint. Like this is perfect timing. So we're very very hopeful. It looks like there's a pretty good chance it gets made at this point.
Wonderful. In the whole world of transgender comics, you brought up the phrase. Have you been able to locate how many comedians are transgender and label themselves as such?
There's quite a few. I think just about every comedy scene has several. I hesitated even talking about it on stage for a long time, just because when I was in Denver, at least 4 or 5 people going to mics and showcases were trans, and I was like, I don't feel like this makes me special, so I need to find something else to talk about. And but there's some really well-known comics in the LA scene as well. Robin Tran is one. She's in at the Comedy Store, and so
Yes,
there are some really really talented comics out there.
yes. Do you know who Julia Scotti is?
I don't.
She's out of, I think she's out of Philadelphia. She's been on Women of a Certain Age on HBO.
Oh, nice.
Now, back in my day, she was doing comedy with Kevin Meaney.
Mm,
So that was back when she was male, and now she's female.
nice.
And yeah, and I got to interview her like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. It's on the YouTube thing,
Oh,
and
cool.
And then Broadway Comedy Club in New York City and Greenwich Village is owned. Those two clubs are owned by Al Martin, and he has a daughter, and her name is now. She is now a she, and her name is Dina Martin. She is the nicest, sweetest, kindest person, and oh so beautiful. I get to have her on here in about a week or two. I'm
That's
super
awesome.
excited. She's like, "Do you want to talk about the transgender?" And I'm like, "Only if you do." I mean, I'm not bringing it up. I'm not, like,
Right?
not mine to expose, but if that's something, you want to talk about. So, how have people treated you in the world with your transition? Do you want to talk about this or go on to the next subject?
Sure, sure. I can talk about it. I'm pretty open with everything. So it was a process for me. My parents are very small town Minnesota, very conservative evangelical Christians. Um, it, growing up in the 90s, it really didn't feel like it was okay to be different at that point.
Yeah.
And so I tried my best to make everything go away. So my ultimate thing was being a professional wrestler. Like, I'm gonna be super male, and I'm gonna, like, have this fraternity of people that kind of we fall back on. And it took me a while to build up the courage or really figure out like how far I wanted to go or what really fit me. And in 2013, when I moved to Denver, is when I transitioned. And I was working in the corporate world for a very large financial services company. And we were starting a new site in Denver. And so everybody kind of moved across country. So my first team was a Mormon guy, a very small town Christian guy from Dallas, and like everybody else was male. But they were so nice to me because they didn't know anybody else, and so they're like, okay, we have to be friends, kind of thing. And I was told on my way out, one of the big corporate people called me up and said, I was like, why is this person calling me? Kind of thing. And they were like, you're the first person to transition with this company openly, so we want to make sure we do it right. And so they kind of gave me a platform. The thing I'm most proud of at that company is I led transgender benefits. They initiated an initiative with that. So it took like a year and a half to go through that process, but to add more benefits to their health package. And I was working with several of the higher ups in the corporate chain, and I realized really quickly that I was the only person that really knew what the issue was. So I
Totally.
kind of took over those calls, but we initiated those in 2016, and I feel like I left the company better than I found it. So I'm very proud about that.
What a legacy. Have
Right?
you had any desire to become an activist for the rights of transgenders, or you feel other people have that pretty well handled?
Well, I do. I'm always going to be very sympathetic. I'm always going to be an advocate. But as far as like marching and certain things like that, I try to pick and choose. To to be honest,
Mhm.
but I'll always be supportive. I'll always be open about my transition. And even since I've started talking about it on stage, I've had several people stop me after the shows and they're like, "Oh my God, you're beautiful! Like you're so funny," and it's been positive so far. So
That's
uh,
great. I'm so glad. I mean, there's enough hate in the world, as we know. There's enough hate out there for miles and miles of
yes.
rivers, but when you can hear that somebody has transitioned like you from male to female and had support, how's your family? Have they come around?
Yeah, my dad has been he's been better. It's taken him some time, but it kind of came down to, you're a part of our family, we're going to support you. And
Good.
I think being away from that, where they don't have to see me all the time, they didn't have to see me go through that process as much, has been more helpful. So they, see me once a year, kind of thing. And
Good.
my cousins and my brother and all my close family have been very, very, very supportive.
Wow.
And
You know,
me,
we don't realize when we're not part of your community, but I have heard that it is so emotionally hard. You're so brave to be willing to go through everything you went through to be who you are on the outside, who you are on the inside. And I'm not saying it correctly, but you get the point. And to risk all your relationships to be authentically who you feel you are. You should be really commended.
thank you so
So
much.
kudos.
Thanks. Yeah, well, and I was fortunate. I moved to Denver, and I fell into a community of people who, mostly through the corporate job, and some through comedy, and some through professional wrestling. But for the most part, I was embraced, and it was still the hardest thing I've ever done. But it could have been so much worse, and building those relationships, I'm very fortunate for. So I feel very blessed in that way.
Yes. I'm a veteran and I have met transgendered people at the VA, and before transitioning they've gone through a whole lot in the
Mhm.
military, whatever, in life. And I've seen so many transgender people in the veteran scenario who have not had support,
Mhm.
needed support, not even felt it at the VA system. So, in terms of doctors, have you felt in the medical field, have you gotten flack, or have you felt more support than flack?
I got really lucky. I got really lucky that a lot of people have gone through it before I did. Have gone through transition and built like a great network of resources. And Denver specifically, I there was a trans-friendly doctor who was a primary care doctor, and she was awesome. She was absolutely awesome. So I started hormones when I was in Kentucky, and that experience, 2012, that time range, it wasn't a great experience. It was referred to the internal doctor essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and because they would recommend hormones or write prescriptions and all that stuff. And he looked like a mad scientist, and he was one of those guys when he does the physical exam, it just felt weird, kind of thing. And
Oh,
not
yeah.
that there was anything ever inappropriate, but his questions to me were, what hormones do you want to be on? Why do you want to transition? And so I told him, just because I read an article, he prescribes them all. A month before I moved to Denver, he tripled my dosage. So I was just waking up crying, like with all this estrogen and stuff. And I get to Denver, and the girl looks at me, and she's looking at what I'm taking, and she looks like Jamie Lee Curtis, like with the salt and pepper hair. And she's like, "Why in the heck are you on so many hormones? We we have this thing called science, and all you're doing is making yourself crazy."
Some hormones can cause a blood clot.
Hmm. Yeah, I, I I got really lucky, and for my body handled everything really well, but my emotions were really jacked up for a long time.
As well they should be. If that's speaking for women. Women are, we're jacked. Everything you guys say about us, totally true. But yeah, so now that you've been transgender for a while, how long exactly has it been?
So I transitioned in 2013, so it's over 7 years at this point.
So you're pretty well adjusted to the fact that you are who you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no going back at this point.
Awesome. So I can't wait. I want to hear your comedy that relates to being transgendered. Is that out there for me to watch?
Uh-huh, yeah. I have some clips up on YouTube. Just Denise Winkelman. There's a one of my favorite clips about being trans is from Comedy Works on July 17th of last year, and big crowd. It was a fun clip. It's the clip I send out to folks.
Wonderful. Where do you want traffic? Besides on your YouTube, that is Denise Winkelman, where else would you like people to help your numbers.
So my Instagram is at Denise, Denise _ Winkelman, Winkelman.
Okay.
And my Twitter is at Gypsy Comic.
Okay, explain that choice to me, please.
Well, it really came from wrestling and living kind of all over the country in Cincinnati and Denver, Minnesota, and just having this willingness to move, kind of pick up and move at later parts of my life. So I'm like, well, I'm pretty much a gypsy, and we'll just throw it out there. Nobody had it at that point.
I love it. I had to find out because it just intrigued me to hear it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan. So I listen to wrestling podcasts all the time, and I was on some shows with Dean Ambrose way back in the day. He's one of the top wrestlers in the world, and he picked up and moved cross country from Cincy to Philly, then to Las Vegas. But he's like, at some point, you got to really take a shot and just go for your dreams. So uh, that's the goal.
Awesome. So now the pandemic, we're in the middle of this very first pandemic that any of us have ever been through. None of us have the correct playbook, and we're all arguing what's the correct playbook. And so when this whole thing lifts and we all get our blank together and decide we're safe to be out there without protection, God forbid, what are some things you plan on doing professionally or personally?
So combo. So first thing is to explore LA. So and just meet people. So we really do a lot of comedy. Go to comedy clubs, all that fun stuff. Want to go on dates because I moved at 41 to Los Angeles and I'm single, and dating in the pandemic has been brutal. And then I think online dating in general is really hard too. I had a girl, so I date women, and my one of the girls on this dating app comes back to me and is like, "Honey, this is LA. Like nobody uses these apps to actually meet people. Like we use them to network."
You
And
do what?
we use them to network. And my thought is that's like going to the meat market, sniffing all the meat, and then having somebody say, "Yeah, how dare you? I'm a vegan," when they ask like what you want to eat.
Oh, that is so funny and crazy too. That's perfect for a joke.
Yeah, I'm working it out. I'm starting to work it in. So
Wow, that's going to be dynamite stuff because it really happened. I love that.
right, yeah. So, but touristy stuff. I want to go to Universal. I want to go to the beach. I want to go dancing. And then yeah, just tell some jokes.
That's great. I can't wait to go listen to your comedy. I'm going to subscribe to your YouTube. Will you subscribe to mine?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
You'll join my 3 followers on YouTube.
I bet you have more.
I don't put a lot out. So.
Well, gosh, it's been really lovely to get to know you,
You
Denise.
too.
And I just can't, like I said, I'm going to go listen to you right now.
Okay.
And I'll probably be sharing it. So if you blush, just go with it. I'm old. I get away with anything I want. Nobody even wants to arrest me. Trust me.
And I'm a filthy comic, so I'm definitely
Good.
so.
I'll laugh at anything as long as it's well constructed, you know?
Good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the interview. And now that you're a graduate of the Comic Spot, anytime, and I really mean it, you want to come on for 5 minutes to plug anything but your anus. If you want to come on and plug anything, you can come back on and plug a show you're doing or something that you wrote that's going out to producers, anything.
Awesome.
I'll put you on.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This has been really fun.
This is your Comic Spot now. Thank you, Denise Winkelman.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye. Love you lots and take care of that mold scenario.
I will do my best. Fingers crossed.
Stay on top of it. Okay. Bye.
Everybody's talking.